Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the chilling mechanics of a real-world abduction to understand exactly how human behavior, trust, and our own cognitive biases can actually be weaponized against us. We're going to examine the infamous 1977 case of Colleen Stan. But look, we aren't just treating this as a standard true crime story. We're going to completely deconstruct the architecture of deception. We're breaking down the highly calculated strategy used to capture a victim who was actively, consciously trying not to be captured. It's a terrifying paradox we really need to unpack right up front. Think about it. How do you trap someone who is already looking for a trap? How does a highly cautious, totally street-smart 20-year-old like Colleen Stan fall perfectly into a predator's hands? Well, to answer that, we have to look way past the physical crime itself and dive directly into the psychology of human decision-making. So let's start with phase one, the perfect victim. Okay, to really understand the mechanics of this trap, we have to completely understand the target it was built for. Colleen was the exact opposite of reckless. She wasn't impulsive at all. She was actually a highly experienced hitchhiker who had developed this incredibly strict personal safety system. She relied heavily on her gut feeling to screen potential rides, meaning she frequently and confidently refused rides that felt even slightly off to her. She avoided single men, anyone acting erratically, anyone who seemed intoxicated. Instead, she was actively looking for visual cues of safety, women drivers, mixed gender groups, and, above all else, families. And this right here perfectly illustrates the sheer, horrific genius of the premeditation involved. Cameron Hooker didn't bypass her highly tuned defenses with sudden physical force. No, he did it by completely, perfectly mimicking the exact social unit she was looking for. By using his wife Janice and their infant child, he created a calculated trust signal. It was a disarming mechanism designed from the ground up to totally bypass a cautious victim's threat detection. Which brings us to phase two, the illusion of safety. Now, picture the actual moment of the pickup. Colleen's caution was fully active. She had actually already turned down multiple rides that very day. So the absolutely crucial point here is understanding exactly how her own cognitive bias hijacked her threat detection in that split second. It's all about something called the representativeness heuristic. Basically, it's a mental shortcut we all use every single day. We just assume something is safe because it visually aligns with a normal, harmless category. When Colleen looked into that car, she saw an adult woman and a baby in the backseat. Her brain immediately, subconsciously coded the situation as perfectly harmless because it perfectly represented her internal template for a safe family. And once she actually got into that car, another incredibly powerful psychological force took over, the consistency bias. Because she had this baseline trust in her own judgment, remember, she was an experienced traveler who trusted her gut. Once she made the choice to accept the ride, this consistency bias made her far less likely to second-guess the situation. Her brain had already decided, okay, this is a safe family, so she naturally began interpreting all of their subsequent behavior through that established lens of safety. Let's move into phase three, normalization before violation. This concept is just absolutely chilling. The attack didn't happen right away. Instead, there was this extended driving period first. The captors deliberately engaged in casual conversation and kept up the appearance of completely normal family dynamics for quite a while. There were no overt threats, no suspicious behaviors. They did this specifically to establish a solid, undeniable baseline of safety before completely and violently shattering it. And this delay? It functioned as a massively powerful physiological and psychological tool. Think about it. Standing on the side of the road, she's an alert hitchhiker with high adrenaline and extreme vigilance. But as the drive continues normally, the delay purposefully allows her adrenaline to drop. Her trust stabilizes. Her situational awareness totally relaxes. She shifted completely into the role of a passive passenger, which drastically reduced her readiness to react at any sudden threat. Now we hit phase four, the trigger event. Once that false sense of security was fully, deeply locked in, the perpetrators initiated the pivot in rapid, highly calculated steps. Step one was the pretext. Hooker claims they were having car trouble. And why does this work? Because it's a perfectly plausible, completely non-threatening reason to pull over into an isolated area, maintaining that illusion of normalcy right up to the very last second. Then comes step two, a massive, shocking behavioral shift. Hooker transformed instantly from a casual, friendly driver to an authoritative, aggressive threat. And finally, step three, immediate control, eliminating her mobility and visibility before she could even process what was going on. This brilliantly illustrates exactly why victims in these situations so often seem to freeze. It's cognitive dissonance. Her brain was experiencing a severe, catastrophic mental conflict. The sudden, violent reality of an attack completely contradicted her firmly established expectation that she was sitting safely with a normal family. Because she was totally disoriented by this massive dissonance, her reaction was naturally delayed. And that brief psychological delay is exactly what allowed him to rapidly introduce a pre-planned restraint system. Which leads us to the final, devastating step. Phase 5, total sensory deprivation. We have to talk about the most infamous, meticulously rehearsed element of control used in this entire abduction: 20. That is the number of pounds of the custom wooden head box that was suddenly fitted and securely locked over Colleen's head during the attack. This wasn't some improvised tool he just grabbed. It was a heavily planned piece of psychological and physical warfare. It was lined with sound-deadening material, making it way more than just a physical restraint to keep her from moving. It was an overwhelming, suffocating sensory prison. Imagine the overload. Olfactorily, you're hit with the smell of raw wood and stale air. Thermally, there's intense heat buildup and almost zero airflow, creating massive discomfort and panic. Auditorily, you are plunged into near-total silence. And tactilely, there's just this restrictive pressure locking against your head and neck. The whole thing was designed to completely eliminate visual input and systematically shut down her connection to the outside world. By completely removing all reference points, this device caused what psychologists actually refer to as environmental erasure. She couldn't tell direction, she couldn't gauge speed, and she couldn't track time. When you violently remove a person's ability to mentally map their own reality, you completely shatter their psychological foundation. The absolute crucial takeaway here is how the strategic outcomes of this transport phase ensured the success of the entire crime. She lost all spatial awareness. She suffered immense time distortion, where seconds literally felt like hours. This triggered a rapid onset of ultimate helplessness, forcing this immediate psychological shift where she became totally dependent on her captor for literally every single piece of sensory input and information. This initial horrific transport phase laid the absolute foundation for the years of long-term psychological manipulation that followed. The architecture of this deception relied entirely on exploiting the very rules of human trust. Understanding how these cognitive biases function, how we rely on mental shortcuts, heuristics, and consistency without even realizing it, is absolutely critical for our own situational awareness. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one vital, provocative question to really ponder about the shortcuts your own brain takes every single day. When your brain naturally tells you a situation is safe, based on all the social cues you've been taught to trust, how do you truly know it isn't a trap?